What nobody tells you about Bohemian Rhapsody is that it almost never left the room it was made in. You've heard it 1,000 times, at weddings, in stadiums, in your car with the windows down. 6 minutes that everyone seems to know by heart. But in the autumn of 1975, the people whose job it was to sell that song looked Freddie Mercury in the eye and told him it would never be played on the radio. Too long, too strange, too much. This is the story of the 6 weeks it took to build it, and the fight it took to let you hear it at all.
To understand why this mattered so much, you have to understand where Freddie stood that year. Queen were not yet the band you know now. They'd had a taste of success, but they were, by most accounts, nearly broke, tangled in an early contract that left them with almost nothing. Everything was riding on their next album. And instead of playing it safe, Freddie walked into the studio with an idea scribbled on scraps of paper, some of them reportedly torn from a telephone directory. He'd been carrying this song in his head for years. He called it, half-jokingly, his mock opera.
Here's the thing about Freddie's plan. It broke every rule at once. A pop single in 1975 was supposed to be about 3 minutes long. Verse, chorus, done. Radio was built around that shape. Freddie's song had no real chorus. It had a gentle piano ballad that melted into a full operatic passage, layered voices stacked into a mock choir, and then, without warning, it detonated into hard rock before drifting back down to a quiet, almost heartbreaking finish. 3 different songs, really, stitched into one. When he described it to the band, you can imagine the silence. It sounded less like a single and more like a beautiful way to end a career.
They took it to the countryside, to a farm studio in Wales, and later several others, chasing the sound Freddie could hear in his head but couldn't yet explain. The ballad came together first. Freddie at the piano, the melody unspooling slow and sorrowful, telling the story of a young man confessing to something terrible. He never told anyone exactly what the song was about. Not then, not ever. When people asked him what it meant, he'd smile and change the subject. That silence was deliberate. He wanted you to bring your own story to it. And for the first minute of recording, everything felt possible. Then came the part that nearly broke them. The operatic section was Freddie's obsession, and it very nearly buried the whole project. He didn't want a choir. He wanted the illusion of one, built entirely from 3 voices, his own and 2 of his bandmates, singing the same phrases over and over, layer upon layer. Reportedly, they sang those overlapping operatic lines for 10, 12 hours a day. Then they'd stack another layer on top, and another. The story goes that the song swallowed something close to 180 separate vocal takes before Freddie was satisfied. Every day he'd arrive with more sections, more voices to add, mock Italian phrases, dramatic names borrowed from opera, thunderclaps of sound. His bandmates, exhausted, half wondered if it would ever actually end. And here's the detail that tells you everything about how far they pushed it. In 1975, music was recorded onto physical reels of magnetic tape. Every time you added a new layer, the tape ran across the machine's heads again, and each pass wore a little of the sound away. They layered so many voices onto that operatic section that, as the producer later told it, the tape began to wear thin. Hold it up to the light, and you could reportedly see straight through it. When the operatic madness finally resolved, the song did the last thing anyone expected. It exploded. Hard guitar, pounding drums, Freddie's voice suddenly furious and free, as if the confession of the ballad had finally boiled over into rage. And then, just as quickly, it let go. The storm passed. The song sank back down to where it started. Soft piano, a single weary voice, and a final line that sounds like a man making peace with something. Because now the song had to leave the studio, and that meant going through the people who ran the record label, the executives whose job was to turn music into hits. When Freddie told them he wanted this to be the single, the lead track, the one played on the radio to sell the entire album, the answer came back fast and cold. No. It was nearly 6 minutes long. Radio stations, they said, would never play something that ran twice the normal length. Disc jockeys wouldn't touch it. Cut it down, they told him. Trim it to 3 minutes. Lose the operatic section, that strange, exhausting middle that had nearly worn the tape to nothing. Make it normal. And Freddie, reportedly, refused to change a single second. Think about what that refusal actually cost him. Freddie wasn't a superstar yet. He was an artist in a nearly broke band, arguing with the very people who controlled whether his music would ever be heard. Every instinct in the industry said they were right and he was wrong. Songs that long simply did not get played. And yet, he wouldn't budge, because to him, cutting the operatic section wasn't editing, it was amputation. The whole point of the song was the journey through all 3 worlds. Take out the middle, and you didn't have a shorter song. You had a broken one. So the 2 sides dug in. The label wouldn't release it as it was. Freddie wouldn't let them touch. So Freddie did something the executives never saw coming. He didn't wait for their permission. He had a friend, a radio DJ, one of the most popular voices on the airwaves, known for being playful and a little rebellious. Freddie handed him a private copy of the song. And, as the story famously goes, he told the DJ he absolutely must not play it on air. It was, of course, exactly the wrong thing to say to a man like that, and Freddie almost certainly knew it. Whether it was a genuine wink between friends or a calculated gamble, the effect was the same. That forbidden copy was now sitting in the hands of some. What happened next became legend. That weekend, the DJ played the song. Then he played it again and again. Reportedly, he teased his listeners with it something like 14 times over 2 days, pretending each time that he shouldn't be doing it, that this forbidden 6-minute epic had somehow slipped onto his show. And listeners went quietly insane. Nobody had heard anything like it. A ballad that became an opera, that became a rock song? What was this? Now picture the executives who'd said no. On Monday morning, they woke up to a problem they never imagined. Record shops were being asked for a single that didn't officially exist yet. The public had already fallen in love with the exact version they'd wanted to butcher, 6 minutes, operatic middle and all. The one thing more powerful than an executive's opinion had just spoken. Demand. You cannot tell a country that wants a song that it can't have it. Suddenly, the argument was over, and Freddie hadn't given an inch. The label released the song exactly as he'd made it, not a second trimmed. On the last day of October, 1975, Bohemian Rhapsody finally, officially, belonged to the world.
And the payoff was staggering. The song the experts swore radio would never touch didn't just chart. It went to #1 and stayed there. 9 straight weeks at the top in Britain, 9 weeks of the entire country listening to the song a record label had tried to bury. It became one of the best-selling singles the nation had ever seen. Every assumption about what a hit had to look like, 3 minutes, a clear chorus, a simple shape, Freddie had shattered all of it and been proven right on the grandest possible scale. The men who told him it was impossible now watched it rewrite the rules of the industry they thought. But here's the part that keeps the song alive 50 years later. The mystery Freddie left on purpose. He never explained what it was about. Not the confession in the ballad, not the dramatic names in the operatic storm, not the rage in the rock section. Interviewers asked him for the rest of his life. He always deflected, sometimes with a joke, sometimes with a shrug. It's about relationships, he might say, and nothing more. Some people hear a young man confessing to a crime. Some hear a private confession of a very different kind. A man wrestling with who he really was in a time when he couldn't say it out loud. Freddie let all of those readings stand. He gave you the feeling and kept the facts. And maybe that's why the song never ages. It becomes whatever you need it to mean. So, the next time you hear those first gentle piano notes, at a wedding, in a film, in your car with the windows down, remember what it took to get them to you. A song that broke every